Eagles Entertainment.
Welcome, Eagles everywhere, to the Eagles Insider Podcast, presented by Lincoln Financial Group. Eagles Insider Dave Spadaro with you, and we do have some players in the facility. The rookies, first-year veterans have reported to the NovaCare Complex. They are able now to have remote learning. Nothing on the field yet. We're still in the very early stages of what is a complicated situation. The NFL and the NFLPA continuing to work toward a resolution for the preseason, for training camp protocols, for regular season goings on. So there's still work to be done, but everybody optimistic that very soon the entire Eagles team and teams around the NFL will be in their facilities getting ready to be back on the field. Now, as far as 11-on-11 practices and full pad practices, much remains up in the air. So stay tuned right here to the Eagles Insider Podcast for more information as we go along and get ready for Eagles football 2020. I'm excited about today's episode. We're going to talk about Eagles wine. Yeah, wine that you can have during game days this year and kind of feel like you're at the stadium. It's the Broad and Pattison collection. More on that later. And also a bit later on, a shout out to Eagles fans from Forbes magazine. We'll get to that in a bit, as well as a stats corner with my man Jacob talking about Miles Sanders and the extraordinary rookie season he had. We're all expecting huge things from Miles in year number 2. But let's begin this podcast with a one-on-one conversation. Ike Reese, a 5th-round draft pick in 1998, certainly understands how important it is to get as many reps as possible to impress the coaching staff. That's not going to happen in this training camp period. So how do young players make the team? What's it been like for Ike these last 5 months with no sports? He's a sports talk show radio host, for gosh sakes. How did he get along these last 5 months? A great conversation right now with Ike Reese.
Ike Reese, it would appear that football season is near, and I know that nobody is happier about that than you are. Right? I mean, first of all,
yeah.
What are the last 5 months been like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, we've gotten creative over at WIP with sort of rehashing some old debates and unsettled arguments with some of our more prominent sports figures in the past. And we've sort of been able to pass the time, at least somewhat being able to do that. The one thing about this fan base is that they don't just live in the moment or worry about the future. There are things that happen in the history of this city from a sports standpoint that we just haven't gotten over yet. And so we found creative ways to sort of be able to discuss those things and have some fun debates and make it feel like somewhat normal in this crazy time that we're living in now, trying to deal with this pandemic. So, but it looks like, Dave, I tell you, man, if you had asked me 4.5 months ago, would we be able to pull this off? I did not believe that you could do sports talk radio without any sports to really talk about. And so I was a little skeptical myself, but I must say I've been pleasantly surprised the way we've all sort of come together. And what it really shows you is that it's not just important for us in the job that we do in covering these teams and talking about them. We need people to care about it, and finding a listening audience that still has enough passion about sports, even though nothing live is going on during one of the worst eras of our lifetime when dealing with this pandemic. It really is a true testament to how much sports means to the Philadelphia fan base.
You know, before we get into the football side of things, it does test your creativity no matter what your business is, right? So what have you learned about yourself as a talk show host, a sports talk show host? You know, you kept it relevant. You've made yourself an indispensable part of people's lives. How good have you been during this time?
Well, I'll tell you, I hope I've been doing a well enough job for people that we've been able to keep locked into our radio show of still remaining authentic, and the things that we talk about, whether it's Eagles free agency during that time or the draft coming up, I've tried to at least keep the same frame of mind I would have during this time of the year. And for us in this area, we care so much about the Philadelphia Eagles. It made it a little easier not to focus in on what the Sixers or the Flyers or the Phillies were doing, because during this time of the year, especially February, March, and April, we're more concerned about what the Eagles are going to do to try to improve the team to put them in a position to win a Super Bowl the upcoming season. So from that standpoint, that pretty much remained the same. I think the thing I discovered about myself was that sometimes you gotta dig a little deeper and focus a little bit more. And I think it forced myself and my co-host and John Marks, my producer and Jack Prince, to be more creative and be more open-minded to things that aren't necessarily centered around sports. So we did more pop culture stuff. We did more TMZ stuff. We paid more attention to what was going on outside of the sports world and tried to make that interesting enough for people to want to listen. And not only that, to join in on the conversation. And the one thing I also learned is if you figure out a way to dive into it and really dive into it, and you're not just trying to pass 4 hours of the day and get through the workday as best you can, you really dive into these topics and you come on the air and you present them to this fan base, they are going to respond to it. So whatever we decided to discuss in those days, I just made sure I fully committed to it. And I got a guy who works on the radio with us from 6 to 10. He's been doing it for 30 years, and he's led the way for all of us. And there's never been a day that Angelo Cataldi mailed it in. And when you listen to Angelo Cataldi on the air talking about anything, you had better believe he wholeheartedly believed what he's saying. So we took his cue, I took his cue, and I figured if I roll with that, we'll see where that works. And it has worked for us. And not to brag about what we did during that time from a rating standpoint, but we put on some numbers, not just locally, but I mean nationally, to where a lot of our sister stations wanted to know how were we able to pull off the rating number that we did without any live sports. So a lot of credit goes to our program director, brand manager, and Spike Eskin, sort of giving us the freedom and really helping us along the way to put some of these topics and things together. And it's been a complete team effort, man. We all just bought into it. And the one thing about this fan base, if it's passion and it's all, they want to talk about it. So it hasn't been as difficult as I anticipated it being. And quite frankly, it's been a collective effort. Everybody that works at the station and all of our listeners, they could have easily tuned out or turned to something else or chose to put attention towards something else, but they wanted an escape. And that's what we're there to provide, is a ability to get away from what's going on in the real world. And not only with non-sports day, but I'll say even through the social justice movement that has gone on during that time, that allowed us also to focus on things that really matter that aren't sports. And so I think that also we use that time wisely and use that moment, and we're still using that moment to really dive into some things that sometimes we as a society don't want to get into because it's so uncomfortable. I think the last 2 months has really forced a lot of us to really look at some other things and really try to figure out ways that we can do better. So it allowed us to have those conversations. And even though they were uncomfortable at times, I must say I thoroughly enjoyed having them because I think we all got an opportunity to learn at each other and learn some perspective about things that should matter more to us in the real world.
Well, Ike, congratulations on that. I'm not surprised because I've known you for a long time, and you've always made the best of every situation. So congratulations to you and to WIP, and hopefully we've got some sports coming up here, including the NFL and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'd like to start talking about football, and I'd like you to take me back and just kind of like juxtapose. What if Ike Reese, if you can remember what you were like as a rookie coming into the NFL, and put yourself in the shoes of a late round draft pick in the NFL right now, knowing kind of the landscape ahead here, preseason games looking like it's not going to happen, limited padded practices. How in the heck are you going to impress the coaching staff?
It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. I will say this, Dave. I think probably the bigger issue for those young guys is the trimmed down rosters. You know, they're not going to bring as many players in the camp. And so that can work, you know, both ways for you, for a young player. Yeah, it's unfortunate that, you know, there's going to be, you know, a handful of guys or so that won't get invited to camp and have that opportunity. But it also says for the guys that are fortunate enough to be invited to camp, there's probably going to be some more opportunities to get reps in practice to show whether or not you deserve to earn a final roster spot here. So my advice to young guys would be, man, if special teams have never been important to you prior to getting to the NFL, you had better make them your number one priority. And you had better figure out what Dave Phipp wants out of you as a player. Where does he want you to focus in on to where he can see you contributing, right? Like that's one of the things that I think was beneficiary to me as a young player. Because I still remember my rookie year like it was yesterday and going to camp. But I was fortunate enough to have not only John Harbaugh, but Ray Rhodes and Emmett Thomas tell me specifically, you don't need to worry about starting. You don't need to worry about playing linebacker. You need to worry about special teams. That's why we brought you here. That's where you're going to make this roster. You need to make sure you keep up with everything we're doing defensively from a schematic standpoint. But they had brought Mike Caldwell in pretty much to be the top reserve linebacker at the outside linebacking spot. And myself being drafted in the fifth round, that's where I was going to help the team improve the most. And that was going to give me the best chance of making the roster. So my rookie camp, man, I was glued to John Harbaugh's hip. It was like I was going to make it to where John Harbaugh and I were like a pair. And I sought out to do that, and not from a butt-kissing standpoint, like, let me see if I can kiss up to the coach so I can make the team. No, it was that I wanted him to know that I understand, it's been explained to me what my role will be if I make this team, and I understand that. So now I need to figure out how to play special teams because I hadn't done a lot of it in college. Only thing I'd done in college was play punt team, and so I hadn't done all the other things, and I spent a lot of time with him after practice and before practice just working on the fundamentals of playing some of the special teams positions, the things he wanted me to do on kickoff return, how to be a good punt return guy, how you hold up guys, how do you hold up without getting penalties called. I had to work with John Harbaugh and Mike Caldwell on those things every day, and I didn't resist that. And because that was explained to me what my role was going to be, I did not worry about starting. I wasn't focusing on trying to beat out Willie T at the linebacker position. I was trying to make sure of all these young guys that have an opportunity to make up the special teams, I'm going to be one of the guys that he feels like is his core guy. And I embrace that role. A problem with a lot of young guys, we were all stars on our respective teams in college. And so you get a perception that playing special teams is for the lesser players. And while in reality that may be right, but it doesn't make it less important. And once young players understand that and they embrace that role versus fighting against that role or looking at it as a demotion, I think you got a better chance of making a team, especially as a late round draft pick. Like that's as a late round draft pick, that's what you got to do, and that's what I did as a young player.
Okay, so I'm a young player, and I want to follow what Ike Reese did, but do I do that with speed, with strength, with like what? Like, and by the way, as you know, special teams is a different ballgame now. It's been pretty much minimized now. So, I mean, what am I doing? Am I just trying to run down the field as fast as I can? Am I trying to be remember Jason Short? Jason Short.
Yes. Full throttle. That was full throttle. That was his nickname. Full throttle.
I mean, but he made it in the NFL for a few years. So, what are they doing? How are they doing that with no preseason games? You can't hit anybody in practice. And for sure, and you know the thing about it is like in practice, special teams are never live. I can't imagine them being live this year.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to impress. It really is. I think what you have to do when you're trying to prepare to come to training camp now, first of all, make sure you're in great shape because you are practicing a full practice. I don't know how the schedule is going to be set up. I'm reflecting back to my days with John Harbaugh. Those 45-minute practices, like before we even started regular practice, you were in a full sweat. Like you were like, man, we still got more to do. So you had better be in good shape because Dave Fitt, I have a lot of respect for as a special teams coach. I can imagine that the intensity level will be ramped up a little bit, not from a physical standpoint where you're worried about collisions, but from let me see how fast you can get down the field. Let me see how good you are at avoiding blocks. Let me see how good you are at being able to block somebody in open space. Meaning you got to be able to catch up to someone, get your hips squared, and get in position that you don't get a penalty and you can be an effective blocker. Like, so making sure you're in shape, making sure you got the strength. For special teams players, you need to be able to combine all those things. It's not like playing a position on offense or defense where you can focus in on what the position requires you to do. When you play special teams and you're a core member, you're going to block, you're going to tackle, you're going to have to get down the field fast, you're going to have to be strong because you may get a guy that outweighs you by 20 or 30 pounds that you have to block. So you have to be a well-rounded athlete to play special teams in this league. And so, like, that's what you got to come in camp being prepared to do. And being in shape from a conditioning standpoint and stamina standpoint is going to give you the best chance because guess what? Every time you get an opportunity to go up there and get another rep in, that's every chance that you get to impress a coach. And the more you can do that at your best, being from a conditioning standpoint, from a strength standpoint, the better chance you're going to have to impress the coach.
I guess I just think that if I'm a coach, no matter what team, I'm going with what I know more than taking a risk on the young guys. I think the practice squad it's obviously larger this year. You can develop players there. Anyway, but then, so Ike, question. Do you have major...
By the way, you're absolutely right, Dave. That's what I think is going to wind up happening. You go with familiarity. That's what you do as a coach. Yeah, I agree. So what kind of themes, what are your themes, your major themes for the Eagles in training camp and how this whole thing's going to work out? And by the way, does Doug Peterson and the Eagles, do we have an advantage here because the coaching staff is in place rather than the rest of the division, which has a bunch of new head coaches? I believe they do. I think they have more of an advantage than it is a disadvantage. The reason why I phrased it that way is they do have some new coaches, right? So there are some coaches, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that obviously Doug is he's at the top there. He's pretty much the chief offensive mind there, but they brought guys in and Scangarella and bringing Marty back that I think the idea was you're going to add some new wrinkles to the offense. I don't know how much you can do that now, so you're probably going to stick with a lot of what you already have implemented and then ease some of the other stuff in as the season goes along, because getting off to a fast start is going to be critical for all these teams around the league. The teams that can get off to the fastest start are going to probably have the best chance to hold on, because soon everybody will catch up as the season goes along. And so as an offense, I'm probably looking at, I want to make sure I have the right guys in there that is going to allow me to get off to that fast start. So you're probably going to go back to something you just said earlier, that familiarity. I could see those guys probably having a greater impact early, and you're sticking with what you ended the season with and then easing new stuff in versus what it would have been if you had a full off season with everybody. You can come out with a lot of new wrinkles that people haven't had a chance to scout.
Are you sold on Jason Peters, the right guard?
Oh man, I tell you what, it'd be hard to bet against him just because of his track record. But after listening to a couple former offensive linemen just talk about the differences of playing tackle and guard, let alone going from the left side to the right side, it's going to be interesting. And training camp probably, a regular training camp probably would have helped Jason Peters out more than this style of training camp, because from talking or listening to other guys, former offensive linemen talk about that position, it's not as much as the technical part that they think he may struggle with, but it's the physicality of playing a guard versus a tackle, because you're going against bigger bodies on the inside. You're going against Fletcher Cox and Aaron Donald and all those type of guys on the inside versus possibly having to deal with a speed rusher on the outside. So if he can withstand the physical part of it at this stage of his career and at his age, I think he'll be okay. But that's the big key is, can he hold up in there from a physical standpoint against 300-plus pound guys for 16 weeks? So I won't bet against him, but I'm not as confident as everyone else is based on his name recognition. I think most people get their comfort level because of Jason Peters. When you listen to guys who played on the line, they all talk about the difficulty that he's going to probably have to deal with going from the left side and going from tackle to guard.
All right, so only a couple more questions here, and I thank you very much for your time. You're always the greatest. The great Ike Reese. Ike, how is this thing going to work? And, players are not going to be in a bubble like they are in the NBA. They only play once a week. We have not had mass testing of the players they've not arrived yet at the team facilities. How is this going to work for players? How difficult is it going to be for players to be in that kind of in a disciplined environment?
Yeah, I think the NFL has the most difficult job of trying to get their league not necessarily just started, but finishing it. The other sports don't have the amount of physical contact that NFL players have, not just in games, but typically during the practice week. They only play once a week. So I got my fingers crossed, Dave. I think if you'd have asked me this 2 months ago, I felt a lot more confident. We have a lot more information now. This thing has spiked like a lot of experts predicted it would spike, and the numbers are starting to rise again. The biggest issue, I believe, is the fact that you're talking about 32 different cities with 50 to 60-something odd players that won't be in a bubble. It's a matter of how do you keep it from spreading throughout a team and not overtaking a team. I think the league, if you're talking about one or two in a 2 or 3 month span or a 2 or 3 week span, but if you start getting up into double-digit numbers, I think we're in trouble. I just think we're in trouble when you talk about per team. There's no doubt players will test positive, but I just can't trust players to do the right thing when they leave their complexes and when they go home. I can't trust that these young guys are going to do the right things throughout the week and do social distancing. There's obviously going to be guys that push the envelope there. It's a matter of how do you keep the league going when the positive tests arrive, and then how do you keep those positive tests down? I have my doubts, Dave. I just do. If I'm being honest, I have my doubts if we can get this thing started on time and finished with a complete season. But I got my fingers crossed like everybody else does.
All right, last one for you, Ike, and this is a weird one because during the course of this whole thing, and I don't even remember what month it is. I don't even know what day it is today. But there was I think Fox played the 2003 Freddie Mitchell 4th and 26 game, right? And you started that game. And I remember I was listening to the commentary, and they were talking about this guy starting at, outside linebacker, and it's like Reese, and he's light, and he's tenacious. And I wonder, do you ever watch that stuff? And like, in retrospect, do you ever watch the games and hear what the broadcasters say about you? And what was your reaction if you do?
Yeah, that was not a good game for me. That was not a good game for me. That was a great job of the Packers' game plan and the understanding that we had basically lost our defensive MVP in Carlos Emmons that year, who I was in there filling in for. And they decided to go with their run game. And they got two big backs back there, and we didn't hold up very well. You know what, Dave? I've learned to deal with it better as I've gotten further and further away from it. The funny thing is that it actually motivated me the following week, and I had a much different game that following week in the championship game against the Carolina Panthers. So, yeah, you hear that stuff, and it's not flattering, but here's how I learned to deal with that, right? I was out there. And so, to me, nothing can take away the fact that I was in that position. And I had to have done a lot of good things to be put in that position in that moment to be trusted to go out there. Now, fortunately for me, the Packers decided to punt the ball on 4th and 1 instead of go for it on 4th and 1 and gave us the ball back late in that game. And we were able to force that game into overtime. That's what led to the 4th and 26 play. We were at sort of midfield. It was 4th and 1, and I still to this day believe had they decided to go for it on 4th and 1 instead of trying to draw us off time, there's no way we would have stopped them on 4th and 1. They would have picked up the first down. They would have picked it up.
Understood. But like, did you watch it when it was on? Like, you cringe, or do you go like, man, I wish my technique was different, or boy, do you remember every play?
Sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I remember all those plays. Listen,
you're a glutton for punishment.
Listen, I still have nightmares about Najee Davenport and Amon Green running up my backside that weekend, and who was it? I believe the fullback William Henderson. Yeah, I still have nightmares about that game, man. Yes, we all do. Listen, hey, Dave, the one thing we as players know, the eye in the sky don't lie, and you can't hide from it. So listen, if sometimes the rabbit gets the gun. In that game, I listen. They got the best of me that game. I can't run from it.
I don't mean about that, but like, do you sit there with a glass of scotch and just like agonize? Even when you have a great game, like, do you watch replays of yourself playing when it's on TV?
Sure. Listen, and because I got my son as a teenager, listen, I still got to sit him down and watch some of these games, man, just to let him know I was out there. I've rewatched the Super Bowl when that comes on TV, Super Bowl 39. Rewatched that one. Which was another one they played? The Carolina Panther game. I mean, as far as we don't get many wins put on TV. But when we do have the Eagles on in some of those games, and if there happens to be a game that I played in or made a couple plays in or what have you, yeah, man. I wear the good games and the bad games with a badge of honor, man. I was fortunate for 9 years to play amongst the greatest athletes to play the game. And so I always whatever the fans about it, the good days and the bad days, baby.
Ike, I got to tell you, I've never watched Super Bowl 39. I can't watch it. It hurts too much. I remember having a terrible time at the party after the game. I don't know if you had a good time, but it just hurts too much.
No, I did not. I did not have a good time, and it took me a while to be able to watch it. I don't think I watched it until maybe 2015, 2016. But now it's more or less, if it's on, I'll sit there and watch it. Listen, we had our shot. It didn't happen. It's okay. It's okay now.
Absolutely. Hey, Ike, let's raise a glass and let's hope we'll do a collective cheers for you and me and everybody listening that we have a 2020 season and that the Eagles rock and roll starting right now.
No doubt about it, brother. I can't wait. And I think the sports gods aren't that cruel that they'll take football away from us. So I think we'll be all right. I think we'll be all right, baby.
All right, Ike, thank you so much. Great job on WIP. Everybody listens to WIP and Ike Reese and John Marks, and keep kicking ass. And thanks so much for your time, Ike.
You all right, brother. Thank you. Marks and Reese, 2 to 6, Monday through Friday, 94 WIP. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, take care.
Now let's talk about the Eagles running back situation from a statistical perspective. Yeah, it's Stats Corner time with Dave Spadaro, me, and my man Jacob.
It's time for another Stats Corner here on the Eagles Insider Podcast, presented by Lincoln Financial Group. I'm joined now by Jacob of the Eagles Kids Club. Jacob, let's talk about a player that, all you kids, everybody, all Eagles fans, so excited about. He was a second-round draft pick in 2019, and he had a season full of highlights. We're talking about Miles Sanders.
On first down, Sanders gets it up the middle. Big hole, Miles Sanders inside the 5. It's first and goal.
Sanders in the backfield. Wentz. Sanders. Touchdown.
Jacob, give me some of the numbers that talk about Sanders in a star-studded rookie season.
Okay, so Miles Sanders was named to the PFWA All-Rookie team after leading his class with franchise rookie records in all-purpose yards with 1,641 and scrimmage yards with 1,327. Sanders became the 7th rookie in NFL history to record 800-plus rushing yards and 500-plus receiving yards. Sanders ranked 3rd among NFL running backs in scrimmage yards per touch with 5.8 yards.
That is so impressive. He also was tied for the 4th most plays of 20-plus yards among NFL running backs, 13 of those plays. And let's see, Jacob, you're a member of the Eagles Kids Club, so you probably don't remember players like Ricky Waters, Dude Staley, those guys way before your time, Brian Westbrook before your time. But do you remember LaShawn McCoy at all?
Yes.
Okay, so he also surpassed LaShawn McCoy for the most rushing yards in Eagles rookie history. And we wonder just how good can Miles Sanders be? Jacob, do you think Miles Sanders in his second season can be a go-to running back who carries the football 20 or more times a game?
Definitely. He has lots of the attributes that you would want in a running back. He has the speed, he has the power, he has the versatility, and is very fast.
Yes, he is. So we'll find out just how much better Miles Sanders gets from year 1 to year 2. That's Jacob from the Eagles Kids Club. This is Stats Corner. If you want to join the Eagles Kids Club, go to PhiladelphiaEagles.com/Kids Club. Jacob, thanks very much.
Eagles fans, a shout out to you for the great work you always do, as well as all Philadelphia fans. Forbes magazine naming Philadelphia sports fans number 2 in the country in 2020. Behind Boston, I know in New England, we get it. We don't like them either. 30 championships up there, 10 championships here. But nevertheless, some recognition for Eagles fans and Philadelphia fans. So this is an appropriate time for an EAGLES Eagles chant from our archives. And finally, for this Eagles Insider podcast presented by Lincoln Financial Group on this Thursday, some time to talk about wine. The Eagles have partnered with Wink to produce the Broad and Pattison wine collection. So I thought, why not make it a great time to talk about it and how Eagles fans can get in on the fun. My guests, Robert Doherty, the winemaker, and Alex Stumpfig from Wink, talking about Broad and Pattison, the wine collection.
We've got some wine to talk about here. I love it. I love the fact that the Eagles are partnering here with Wink, and we've launched a Broad and Pattison Wink wine collection. Alex Stumpfig, I know that you are the Vice President, Global Business Development at Wink. What is so special to you about partnering with the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, Dave, first of all, thanks for having us on. I'm actually from Philadelphia originally. I grew up downtown. I've been an Eagles fan for life, so it's pretty serendipitous for me to, grow up, go into the wine business, and then eventually make a wine for the Eagles. It's awesome. It's been a really incredible experience. The Eagles are an amazing organization, and we are, all of us at Wink are absolutely thrilled to be associated with the Eagles. And really, when it comes down to these wines, there's a distinction between sports affiliated wine from before and now. And what we're really trying to do is make a more modern, contemporary iteration of sports affiliated alcoholic beverage. And these are legitimate wines. We're serious about how we make these wines. Obviously, Robert's going to go into the winemaking, but we want Eagles fans to know and Philadelphians to know that these wines are perennial. They're available year-round, and they are extremely food-friendly and great on their own. They don't have to be drunk during a tailgate, during dinner, you name it, picnic. These are awesome wines. So, yeah, we're excited.
And, by the way, the first week, the wines were on sale here in the Philadelphia region. They're available in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Excellent sales, great start. Really excited reaction from Eagles fans. A Cabernet Sauvignon, a Chardonnay, and a Rosé are available for Eagles fans. And, Robert, you are the winemaker here. What goes into the process, and what, Robert, did you want to create with these three wines?
Well, really, I think Alex touched on it there. Like, these are serious wines, so often, like, alcohol affiliated with sports teams can be a novelty. These are not novelty items. These are serious wines that I was very serious about creating. The Chardonnay and Rosé, for instance, those are wines that are fermented dry, wines that you often find a little bit sweeter in the supermarket or anything like that. Like, these are dry wines, meaning they have absolutely no sugar in them. They're meant to be enjoyed with food. You can enjoy them on their own, but we really took the time to make these wines correctly with very minimal intervention. It's really just bringing the grapes in, making sure that we ferment them to completion, and then aging them properly for what we want. The Chardonnay, we put on some neutral oak and a little bit of new as well, so you get some nice oak elements in there. It's not overly hedonistic as many Chardonnays can be. You can just continue to drink it. The Rosé is a dry rosé. A lot of times you'll find those will be really sweet. This is a nice, crisp, high-acid rosé that you can just enjoy. And the Cabernet Sauvignon, is deep, bold flavors, very, very attractive food wine, go really well with, your classic Philly cheesesteak. So really these are wines that you can, open up and enjoy with your team, or you can lay them down for a few years and enjoy them later. It's about celebration of the Eagles, celebration of Philadelphia, and we wanted to make sure that the wines were just as serious as the fans were making them for.
Robert, I have a confession to make, and I'm being dead honest here. this is a great moment in my life. I have never, well, this is why I'm being honest. My dad always drank wine and he always tried to get me into wine. And I just never cultivated a palate for it. And so this opportunity with these three wines, I'm going to learn to drink wine and to appreciate wine. So what advice do you have for me with these three wines? Is there a particular order that I should try them in, particular foods that I should try them with, or a particular occasion that I should celebrate drinking these wines?
Well, my first advice for people getting into wine is to make sure that if you can, I know it's difficult in these times right now, to share them with people. Wine for me is a community event. The best thing you can do is share a bottle of wine with somebody. Tell them why you love it. They can tell you why they love it or don't love it. Hopefully you love it though. And share that experience. So through shared experience, I think is the best way to learn about these wines. If I were to drink them in order, I would do Chardonnay, Rosé, and then move into the Cabernet Sauvignon. It's kind of nice to go lighter into dark. And my other piece of advice would be, just make sure that the wines are not the focal point of your interactions, right? Wine are an accent to a great life. So make sure they live on your table and they live with good conversation and with good people.
Okay, so Alex, you're an Eagles fan. We're going to look ahead to 2020 here, and you're going to tell me on game day, Eagles begin against Washington September 13th. How would you lay out your wine choices for that day? What are your suggestions for Eagles fans?
Well, it's probably going to still be a bit warm at that time of year. So I think if you're tailgating, whatever that means these days, perhaps during the day you start with a little rosé to open up your palate, and then from there, as you start to eat different foods throughout your tailgating experience, definitely want to jump into the Chardonnay. Great by itself, great with a lot of different foods, very versatile. And then, after the Eagles crush Washington.
So we've got three wines, a 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon, 2019 Chardonnay, 2019 Rosé, available for $17.99 throughout Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, also online, PhiladelphiaEagles.com/wine, and a portion of the proceeds benefit the Eagles Autism Foundation. Guys, I think launching the Wink Wine Broad and Pattison collection, it's just a great idea to bond even further the Philadelphia Eagles and their fans. I thank you very much for collaborating with the Eagles. Robert, great job on the wines. I look forward to launching my career as a wine connoisseur with this. I'm excited.
Reach out to me. Let me know how you do, all right?
I sure will, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and good luck with everything, and just thanks for making another part of the Eagles season that much more fun.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers.
Go Eagles.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. You guys. Thanks, guys.
And that will do it for this Eagles Insider podcast presented by Lincoln Financial Group. Thanks for joining, everyone. If you have a moment for a rating or suggestions, we appreciate it very much. Those 5-star ratings help get Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz to take notice of this Eagles podcast. And it also helps Eagles fans around the world find out about the Eagles Insider podcast. Thanks to Ray Doyle and Peter Kelly for their work. Thanks to you for joining every time we have an episode. We love it so very much. And we are looking forward to football at the NovaCare Complex next week. So I'll be back on Monday with more the Eagles Insider podcast presented by Lincoln Financial Group. Insider Dave Spadaro saying, thanks for joining, everyone. Have yourselves a great Eagles day, and fly, Eagles, fly.